Welcome to the deep dive. Our goal here is always to dive into a set of sources, pull out the key insights, and give you a real understanding without all the noise.
Exactly.
And today, we're really digging into something quite remarkable. It's the life of Manuel del Valle y Colón. Here's a figure whose life seems almost like a debate between, well, the strict world of law and the much more fluid world of poetry.
That tension, yeah, that's really the heart of it.
Yeah.
We're basically tracking his journey from, high-stakes civil rights work, being an administrative judge, very structured, very action-oriented,
Right.
and then plunging into the abstract, almost philosophical side with his poetry collection, Floating. The mission today is to kind of unpack how one person could weave together this career of fighting for others, for the unheard, with this deep personal exploration of authenticity, change, and this idea of floating.
And the sources, right away, they signal this isn't just a standard American story. The poetry volume, Omnibus Poetry XLI, Floating. It has the title in Chinese, Pyo Fude,
Fufude, yes.
Japanese, Furchingu, and Thai. Like so. I mean, why those specific languages? Why put that right on the cover?
Well, I think it immediately tells you his thinking isn't confined, by just American law or culture. He's reaching for something universal, this concept of impermanence, of letting go, and using these different linguistic traditions. It's like he's anchoring the idea globally. It really lines up with the dedication, too. The book's for people who believe in letting go rather than always doing. And crucially, following their own internal compass. It feels like this global intellectual quest right from the start.
That's quite a contrast to the legal force he became. Okay, so let's build that foundation first. The advocate. The sources seem to trace his commitment to justice right back to his beginnings. Born in East Harlem, 1948, grew up in the Carver and Douglas projects.
Yeah, that background, it definitely provides let's say, the fire. But even as a student back at Brooklyn Tech High School, you already see glimmers of the philosopher, don't you?
You do. He was involved in things like the Free World Club Debating Society, and the sources even have these notes from classmates. They called him an amateur historian, my favorite philosopher, even king of quotes. So he was sharpening those tools early on.
Building that intellectual toolkit, absolutely.
But maybe the most critical piece of that early activism was his role with ASPRA. He was the Issues and Actions chairman for the Aspira Clubs Federation, trained by the founder herself, Antonia Pantoja. That wasn't just like a club membership.
No, not at all. That was serious, hands-on organizing. And it seems like it directly shaped his path right into the Ivy League.
His academic journey shows incredible focus. Yale's transitional year program, Wesleyan, then a transfer to Princeton history, Latin American, Afro-American studies.
And at Princeton, he wasn't just a student absorbing information, he was actively building things. Founded the Campus Latino organization, set up one of the very first Ivy League seminars on Puerto Rican history and politics. He was making space.
And here's where the academic work hits the real world, hard. His senior thesis, part of it wasn't just filed away in a library.
Right. It became practical almost immediately. That research got rolled into a memo for Senator Jacob Javits. And then the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund used that memo to help frame the complaint for a truly landmark case.
Which case was that again?
That was Aspera v. Board of Education of the City of New York. You see the direct line. Project upbringing, activist training, deep academic work, and boom, landmark litigation. He graduates Yale Law in '74 and goes right into the fight as a trial attorney.
Those early legal victories were massive for the communities he represented. Let's talk about the impact of Aspera. It led to this consent decree for bilingual education. What did that actually mean, like for a kid sitting in a classroom back then?
It meant fundamentally that if you didn't speak English fluently, you weren't just left behind anymore. It forced the system to provide the resources, the structures, so those kids could actually get a proper education. It stopped penalizing them for their native language.
That's huge.
And then right after, he's working on Pabon v. Levine. That case made sure Spanish-speaking folks applying for unemployment actually got notices they could understand, outlining their rights. He was tackling these systemic barriers, language, access that kept his community on the margins.
So after these major court wins, he transitions more into public service, scholarship, spent over 10 years at the U.S. Department of Labor. But he kept up the intellectual work too, right, with big fellowships.
Oh, definitely. The Rockefeller Foundation Fellowship let him study Puerto Rican jurisprudence before the U.S. Supreme Court. Then a Ford Foundation Fellowship resulted in this really important article toward a language-based national origin modality, published in the Harvard Journal of Hispanic Policy.
Okay, let's unpack that title a bit. Language-based national origin modality. What was the core argument there, in simpler terms?
Basically, he was arguing for a legal way to see language discrimination as its own specific type of national origin discrimination, making it clearer legally that you couldn't discriminate based on the language someone spoke. It was about building stronger legal tools to fight that kind of injustice, essentially paving the way for future lawyers.
And all this experience, this advocacy, it leads to his highest administrative position, Chief Administrative Law Judge of the New York State Division of Human Rights. Why is that role such a big deal for listeners who might not know?
Well, as Chief ALJ, he wasn't just arguing one side of a case. He was overseeing the entire system for handling major discrimination complaints across the state. Think about that. He was the ultimate decision maker for countless human rights cases.
Wow.
And the sources highlight he was the first Puerto Rican in that job. And he made it a point to prioritize really tough cases, complex racial and sexual harassment claims, and also groundbreaking AIDS discrimination cases back when that was incredibly fraught. It put him right at the center of human conflict, requiring serious judgment and decisiveness day in, day out.
That's just an incredible track record of, well, doing. A career built on action, on structure, on tangible results, which makes this pivot even more striking. How does someone so deep in that world, the legal grind, then turn around and write a whole volume of poetry dedicated to letting go? Let's talk about floating.
It feels like a sharp turn, but maybe it's necessary, almost like a release valve. I mean, think about it. The legal world forces you to confront human pain, conflict, injustice constantly. The poetry feels like searching for balance, maybe an antidote.
Okay.
The big themes in floating you mentioned, fluidity, authenticity, healing, resilience, they feel like a direct response, a counterweight to the rigidity and the demands of the legal system.
Let's dig into that fluidity theme. There's a poem mentioned, Swimming in the Ocean, talks about total freedom, imagination is free to roam, no need to hide who you are. That sounds like pure escape.
It does, but then he contrasts it quite sharply with city life. The sources mention this idea that confusion makes you float through relationships, and here floating isn't liberation, it's more like aimless drifting, existential confusion, maybe.
Right, like being lost.
Yeah. And creativity is only okay if it's for productivity or efficiency. Cell phones take the place of real childhood play. He seems to be saying modern life pushes us into the state of floating without real direction or purpose.
What really jumped out at me from the sources was his critique of the performative self. It almost feels like the poet criticizing the lawyer, or at least the pressures of that professional world.
I think that's a really sharp insight. The performative self, it's the mask, right? He says performative people, they exist to respond to the needs of others. Their self-worth comes entirely from outside approval. They suppress their own truth. He literally says they're drowning themselves in the process of superficial competition.
It sounds appealing, though, this idea to just be instead of do, to ditch the polished version of ourselves. But, I mean, look at his own life. From the projects to Chief ALJ, that career was defined by doing, by rigorous action, often high-stakes performance. Wasn't that the only way he could actually make the changes he fought for? How do you square that circle?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I think the key is his poetry isn't anti-action, it's anti-pretense. He says the best polished version of ourselves is clueless to the essence of the true self. So the call to just be rather than do isn't about passivity, it's about ensuring the action comes from an authentic place. Embracing your flaws, your defects, blemishes, and imperfections, as he puts it. The doing has to flow from the being, not be a substitute for it.
Okay, so authenticity first. And finding that authentic self, he connects that directly to healing, but it requires vulnerability.
Yes, the source material is crystal clear on this. Healing is about revealing, not hiding. And clarity heals, mends, repairs. You can't fix what you won't look at.
Makes sense.
But that takes guts. It means admitting, as he writes, that being rejected for who you are must hurt. You have to be willing to face discomfort, potential rejection, weakness.
This doesn't sound like a call for softness, then. It sounds more like a recipe for resilience. The sources even push back against the idea of easy success.
They really do. He dismisses grades, surface wins as not the real measure, and this line is powerful. Prepare now for tomorrow's failures, for there is no success without failure.
Wow.
He argues the real growth comes from having to rethink your complete strategy, from dealing with the agony and ecstasy of losing to win or winning to lose and win again. Honestly, that sounds exactly like a trial lawyer describing litigation. Sometimes you lose a battle to win the war. Loss is part of the strategy.
So the poetry isn't just about finding inner peace. It's almost like a manual for engaging with the world toughly but truthfully, without losing yourself. But he doesn't leave it entirely internal, does he? He brings it back to community.
Right. Despite all the focus on inner truth, connection to others is vital. There's that analogy, life is a carousel, people come and go, but ultimately we are anchored to the people in our lives. We need that anchor. And that little anecdote about the race, the competitor who tripped.
Yeah, where the other runner stops, helps them up, and then they continue the race.
It's simple, right? But it was this act of raw humanity that cut through the rules, the decorum of the competition, as he calls it. He says there were two winners that day because they both showed humanity. And that mirrors the legal advocate, doesn't it? Wanting to get past the courtroom decorum, the procedures, to fight for what's truly human, truly just.
Okay, this leads us perfectly to the synthesis. We have the legal work, the doing, fighting for bilingual ed, fighting discrimination. And we have the poetry, the being, searching for authenticity, for fluidity. How do they connect? What's the bridge between these two seemingly different worlds?
I think the bridge is this deep commitment to integration, to wholeness. You see it in his curiosity about languages, Thai, Chinese, Japanese, Taino traditions. Whether he's writing a poem or a legal argument, the underlying question seems to be, what does it mean to be human here? The legal work was, in a way, the practical application of that philosophical quest.
Can you give a really concrete example? Like, how does fighting for bilingual education link up with the poetry?
Well, the poetry directly attacks what he calls split lives, split sounds, split hearts, all forms of division. He believed that forcing everyone into one mold, societal homogeneity, leads to inevitable decline. Diversity, the colors of the world, strengthens us.
Okay.
So fighting for bilingual rights wasn't just about language access. It was the legal tool to achieve that deeper integration unification. It was about preventing those split lives before they started, forcing the system to embrace diversity. He used the law's rigor to pursue the poet's vision of acceptance.
That's fascinating. So the poet argues for blurring the lines of outcasts from insiders or outsiders. And the lawyer, through the Aspira decree, literally that blurred the line between the English-speaking school system and the Spanish-speaking students, forcing unification.
Precisely. It's the same impulse. His whole career arc, really, from the projects to chief ALJ, was fueled by this dual engine. He needed the inner work, the poet's quest to just be, to withstand the immense pressure and conflict of the doing. The poetry was like his compass, making sure the advocate stayed true, didn't just become another polished version lawyer.
So Manuel de Valle y Colón, his journey from the Carver-Douglas projects, changing education systems, presiding over human rights law, is quite a statement.
It really is. It's like living proof that, as he suggests, the prisons that are built by others to keep us shackled to their beliefs, rules, and expectations, those can be broken down. His work, both the legal and the poetic, it kind of offers a key. Freedom, he implies, lets the imagination run wild, building a new world.
That's a powerful legacy. We've talked a lot today about this tension, haven't we, between that best polished version of ourselves and the need to simply just be, and how modern life's confusion can make you sort of float through relationships until something forces clarity. So we'll leave you, the listener, with this to think about. Reflecting on your own life, was there a moment, a situation that demanded you stop floating, stop just drifting in that confused state, and really confront the need to define who you essentially are?
Yeah, something to mull over.
Yeah.
Balancing the doing and the being in your own experience.
We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.